All right. Hello, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Nice to see you all. See, some people have started to assemble in chat. I am monitoring the drop frames. Hopefully, we don't have any issues. I've seen a couple of people had to refresh. I didn't have any freezes on my end, but I do sort of wonder if I'm having maybe a few more drop frames than normal. That also could have been because I opened some software that I typically don't open when I'm about to stream because I had to export an image to talk about tonight. Hopefully that did not pull too much memory, but we'll see. Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well. I see some familiar faces in chat. Hope you're all well. Thanks for joining me on this Thursday night. It is Starjump Weekly or Starjump Weekly Chat or Starjump Star Citizen Weekly Chat. I need to come up with a name for this thing. I just call it Starjump Weekly. That's what it is. It's just for me, a chance for me to catch up on this week's news, any insights that have come out, or perhaps sometimes talk about just topics that have been sort of top of mind. So we're going to try it. Hopefully the stream does okay tonight. Again, I see some of you with issues, so let me know if it gets bad. I don't know what else I can do other than just sort of stop and restart the stream a lot, but hopefully it'll hold up okay and get a little better here. Maybe I have too many windows open. I don't know. But anyways, we'll see. All right. So a couple things real quick. Obviously tonight we are going to talk about Star Citizen 1.0 and sort of what we think is maybe required for it. Waybreak says, yeah, audio video sync is off. Okay, yeah, try restarting maybe. Try restarting. I'm showing good bit rate and everything. So I'm not 100% sure why it's doing that. Other people on YouTube, are you seeing a desync? Let me know if those of you in YouTube fixed. Okay, cool. Thanks. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, everyone. I don't know if I'm having some issues tonight, maybe in my area or whatever. I've had good internet all day. I'm on fiber, so I get 5 gigabits. So I'm not 100% sure what's going on. But anyways, we're going to talk a little bit about 3 things, okay? Now, weekly chat, Star Citizen weekly chat, Starjump weekly chat, whatever you want to call it. Yes, we have sort of a main topic. We're going to talk about Star Citizen 1.0, but we also talk about other things. We tangent and whatever. It's more just a weekly chat with at least one anchor topic that we're going to cover. Okay. So first things first, though, I did want to talk a little bit about the monthly report that came out. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that we could cover there. We're just going to kind of run through this because I talked a little bit about it yesterday, but we'll run through some of this stuff because I think there is some interesting things. Actually, bear with me. Did I not put them in the folder? Oh, yes, I did put them in the folder. Okay, but we'll talk about them. There were a number of updates to certain ships. One of the first big ones I thought was pretty interesting. Obviously, was this first image of the Paladin. Those of you in chat, are you excited for the Paladin? I think coming off the Asgard, CIG really knocked that ship out of the park. The funny thing is the interior is the only thing I don't love about the Asgard in terms of its layout. I wish the staircase was a little different and a few other little things. There's some wasted space on the bottom front, but what I'm hoping is that's more of just a product of going off of the Valkyrie base hull. This Paladin will be a completely new interior, new ship hull, everything. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, it takes from the Valkyrie DNA." I think it maybe pulls a little bit from that DNA, but to be totally honest, it's its own ship. So yeah. Hold on a minute, everyone. I'm noticing too on Discord. If you're on the Starjump Discord, I'm noticing the Starjump announcements are kind of going crazy. I'll need to look into that. I'm not sure what's causing that actually. But anyways, Paladin. There you go. First image looks really cool. Again, I love when CIG really leans into the decal work, and it looks like they did on here. You know, again, you take away a lot of the details and stuff, or a lot of the decals and the small little details and stuff, and it really does lose a lot of personality and feels a lot more gamey. So that attention to detail and stuff is really appreciated. And if you look through here, you know, there's a lot of areas here that have nice little decal elements and stuff, nice little details and stuff. So I think it looks really cool. Oh, it's because Twitch keeps restarting, so Discord pings after every start. Yeah, God, why is Twitch restarting so much? That is really odd. I don't know why that is. And I just had something else freeze. What is going on tonight? All right, hopefully, I'm showing is unstable right now. But that's weird because I have good internet and everything should be stable. So we're going to try it. If it gets really good, everyone, then I will just have to stop the stream, do a restart, and pick it back up, which I hate to do. But if you see anyone pop in with any complaints, just tell them to restart. Obviously, we're dealing with a little bit of a network issue. So, but yes, Paladin looks great. I'm really excited for it. Really cool to see that that ship has hit the Lot Zero phase. They also showed us an interior image here of the Perseus. This is the Perseus elevator. The elevator runs through sort of the center line of the ship and takes you to all three decks. And you can kind of see that here. We have level 0, level 1, and then a level 2 up there. Level 0 is probably the cargo deck. Level 2 is the habitation sort of area, and then level 3 is the bridge area. I think they call them something different, but those are sort of the three decks. Samuel says Windows did force an update. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But yeah, so Perseus, Paladin, both entering LOD Zero reviews, which is really great and a great sign that they will be coming this year, obviously. As a matter of fact, if I had to guess, I think Perseus is definitely IAE, but Paladin, you know, it's possible we could see that at CitizenCon, so a little bit early, or during the CitizenCon time period. I'm still doubtful of that. I think what we're going to do is we're going to get a ship sale. We might get a few things for CitizenCon, but I think CIG is going to hold a lot of their big guns for IAE and focus more on that. I could definitely be wrong, but we'll see. In addition, CIG has showed off a few other pieces of interesting imagery lately, a couple sneak peeks in the medical gel goo thing. We're going to talk about that here briefly in a minute, as well as additional images of the Apollo. We looked at the Apollo images on the last stream. They released this sneak peek here of the interior of Medical Bay. It looks like it's got the Tier 1 medical bed there as well. Is it Tier 1 or Tier 3? Tier 1, right? Tier 1. But anyways, pretty cool. I did notice here that this says sliding door, so I'm guessing we're looking at an entry looking back into the medical wing. But then you see a door back here, so I'm kind of curious if that is a storage room or if there's two exits to the medical room. We'll have to see. Samuel says, question. You think CIG will drop all Squadron 42 star systems into SC at the same time? Possibly, and we're going to get to that here in just a minute, and we'll go into that, Samuel. But there you go. I think they're doing some cool stuff. In addition to that, we got updates on a few other ships. The Hull B has entered pre-production phase, which is exciting. Obviously, that ship had to go through a bit of reconcepting. The ship is supposed to be able to land on the ground planet side with cargo on board, but in its original concept, it had a bottom spindle. That's not going to be possible if it's able to land on the floor on the planetary surface with cargo. So that's going to require some redesign. So I'm pretty excited to see where they take the Hull B. I do think the Hull B is going to borrow very heavily from a look standpoint from the Hull A. In addition, they talked about the ironclads going through white box review, both of those, ironclad and ironclad assault. But what they specifically mentioned there too in that monthly report is that they're putting a lot of time and effort into that Drake kit, and they even reference the usage of that in future ships. Now, in the game files currently, there are kit listings for Drake, RSI, MISC, maybe some others, but definitely those three. And CIG never mentions any of those other than the Drake one. And the reason, my theory behind this, and I'm wildly speculating here. Obviously, I don't speak for CIG in any way, but my theory behind this is that the Drake kit is getting the most attention right now, and they're trying to build out that Drake kit with a lot of variation, a lot of options and stuff to play with. And the reason that those ironclads haven't seemingly not made a lot of progress, they kind of got still in white box, is because so much work has been put into the kit, the Drake kit, that when those ships move into gray box and final art, those two phases are going to go faster than what they normally would go, right? And then that same speed efficiency, those speed efficiencies will carry right over into the Kraken. And that's exciting. That's possibly the first signs of a little bit of a different ship building pipeline. I mean, it's still the same pipeline, but we could see some timelines for some of those pipelines change, right? So they may spend a lot more longer now in white box, really figuring out the flow of a ship, then go into gray box with all the kit assets and get through that quicker. That could be a positive thing, especially thinking back to ships like the MSR, which could have possibly benefited from some extra time in white box figuring out those flows. They may have learned that, oh, it needs that second entryway, right? So spending extra time in white box, I think, does allow CIG to sort of figure a ship out a little better. And so I'm all for it. I would love for John Carew to speak on this soon. I was really hoping they were going to do this during the Ship Showdown Q&A. Again, as many of you know, I didn't like a lot of those questions that they took from the audience or the community. But one of the questions I would love is the kits. How are those coming along? Is CIG finding that they are approaching the shipbuilding pipeline differently because of the kit build outs? That would have been really interesting. So that's that. Obviously, the Kraken's still pushing through its pre-production phase. Great to hear. I'm hoping that ship does not get paused at all. As you all know, I'm a big Kraken fan. No mention of the Pioneer, but we do know it's in production. That's going to be a long-haul ship. I don't expect we're going to see that ship for another year and a half or so. At the soonest. I think it's still in white box and concept build is what I think. And then they talked about some unannounced ships and stuff like that. So again, pretty interesting PU monthly report. I encourage you to go read it if you haven't read it already. Citizen Ninja says the Hull B might get a price adjustment before IAE from 140 to like 160. Yeah, it's possible. The Hull B is still pretty early on in its ship pipeline progress. It's in that pre-production phase, so IAE may be the last time to get it at its current price. But your point is well taken. All right, next I want to get to the next thing that was revealed today, which was our first bits of information on there we go. First bits of information on the Odin system from Squadron 42. Obviously, this is really exciting for those of you excited about additional systems eventually coming to Star Citizen as well. This is our first peek at seeing some of those locations we're going to, and a little bit of a backstory behind them, a little bit of information on the Odin system. Now, I know some of you are wondering, is this system going to come to Star Citizen? Yes, I think it's natural that it's going to come to Star Citizen, but I promise you this will be a post-Squadron release system. I don't even think CIG, one of the primary reasons they didn't say that it was coming in Star Citizen 1.0 is because they didn't want to commit to anything like that. Obviously, they would have to bring Odin into another development stream and get it prepped for the PU. Sure, all the art assets are here. They could just throw it in to the PU, but there would be no missions there, point of interest for those missions, all that kind of stuff. Mission givers need to be put out, all the player facing stuff. So, there would be a lot of work that would have to go into the Odin system to get it in Star Citizen. Now, I think it's pretty reasonable to say though that that work is going to get done. We're going to get Odin. If you look at some of the information here, one of the jump points is a jump point from Odin to Nyx to Odin, right? So there's an active jump point there that will link it to the Star Citizen 1.0 systems. But again, I encourage you to go check this out. Some really cool stuff. They go into a little bit about this one station here called Fortune's Cross. Really interesting station design. I would love for some of this stuff to come into Star Citizen again. When you look at this, you can really get a sense of some of that other work that has been done for Squadron 42 that will eventually carry over into Squadron, will carry over into Star Citizen, especially after Squadron releases, right? It just shows you, again, there's been a lot of work done in the background, right? So let's see here. So I did want to pull up a few interesting things from it that I thought were pretty cool. A couple pieces of imagery. Again, here's another imagery from that newsletter published, again, just showing some of these new station designs that we will see in Squadron 42. Again, I think we will see these carry over in Star Citizen, maybe just through Odin, but we could also see some of these stations come into like Castra. That's another place I could see CIG borrowing some of these elements, would be in a place like Castra, like the system. So we'll see. We'll see. Couple other bits of imagery that I thought were interesting I wanted to pull up just because they are ship related was, let me bring up, is it in here? Yes, I think. Stand by. Is it in here? Oh yeah, right here. And this image right here, I think there's something pretty cool to look at. Eskimonian pointed this out to me earlier. I had noticed it as well, and I have a feeling some other people will notice it. You got a couple interesting things here. For one, you got these whole C's down here at the bottom. Can you all see those? See those whole C's? Well, right over here, you see this big thing right here? That is a giant cargo ship. How do we know? Remember when we talked about that cargo ship and we did the kit bashing on it? This is that ship. Remember those little circular tube sort of canisters that were on the top port side of the ship? They're right here. You can actually see them. It gives you a sense for how big that ship is when you stack it next to a collapsed hull C. You know what I mean? So that's a big ship. That is definitely a big ship. I'm not sure how big the hull C is when it's collapsed. I would have to look at Starjump Fleet Viewer. But yeah, we've seen this in a few trailers. I'm pretty sure it's a consolidated Outland ship. You can see it here as well. You can see the front of the ship here. All right. I'm not sure if there's any other views of it. You can see it's really hard to see, but it's right there. There's our hull C's again, but there's that cargo ship in there. So just a little bit of an interesting detail. I mean, that is probably a 300-meter long ship or something like that. I mean, it's really, really big. I don't know if it's a freighter Artemis. It could be a refinery ship, could be who knows what it could be. It does look cargo in nature, based off some of the other video we have seen in the past. But to be totally honest with you, it really could be anything. No, pretty different than the Caterpillar Draco. Much, much bigger. And it's a little bit, it's definitely wider than the Caterpillar, has a much different function, different type of bridge. So if you've seen other images of it, which I don't know if I have any of those handy right now, but if you've seen other imagery of it, it's pretty different. It's pretty different. Yeah, I don't think I have those on me. I don't have those images in that video on me right now, but it's pretty different. It's pretty different. But I mean, it does look massive. I mean, look at how much room on this station footprint it's taken up. And especially when you compare it to these hull C's down here, even if these hull C's were extended, and let's say they were extended and they're out to back to here, 125 meters, I think, on an extended hull C, that would easily put this thing in the 250 to 300, 350 meter range. So a very, very big industrial ship. Let's just call it that, a big industrial ship. Okay, but yeah, so there it is. Squadron monthly report came out. Or sorry, the Squadron newsletter is what that is from, and then we had the PU monthly report. Oops, I have switched off my save. You get the Grim logo there for a second, but both of those came out on Wednesday and Thursday, respectively. So definitely check those out if you can. There's a lot of great information in the Star Citizen PU monthly report. As many of you know, I don't cover those in depth. There's a lot of other creators that do. So feel free to check those out. I think JoJo TV did a good one. I'm pretty sure Space and some of the other people are covering it. So definitely check those out. I typically only focus on the ship stuff. Primarily the monthly reports too are just like packed with with news on like AI and stuff. But there was one interesting thing. Primarily the monthly reports too are just like packed with with stuff. But there was one thing that was talked report with our our good friend, the medical goo. Okay, and we have gotten some further information on that. And it is essentially on these canisters. So essentially, actually, let me swing over to, bear with me, everybody. I'm going to bring up an image here for myself for reference. Or did I delete it? Okay, so one med gel canister, so one of these little canisters here, I guess is currently priced at 100,000 AUEC and provides one respawn. Okay, so one of those respawn gel kits is one respawn. Okay, tier 1 and tier 2 beds give two reses, so have a 200,000 capacity. So a tier 1 and tier 2 bed, you can put two of these cards in. And then a tier 3 bed, you can put one card in. Okay, so right away you're starting to see some benefit coming back to tier 1 and tier 2 beds. So and we got some additional information though. Let me swing back to that. Let's see here. Why is this thing still populating? Sorry, Twitch is definitely acting weird tonight, everyone. I apologize. I need to figure out what is going on with that, but we're going to keep going. If y'all can bear with it, I can bear with it. Yeah, I do not know why Twitch is doing this. It may be Restream. Yeah, it may be Restream. But yeah, anyway, the canisters. Well, it looks like here there's additional information that the canisters. Let's see here. Let's see here. They can't be stacked. They can't be hooked onto a belt. These are the little gel packs here. They cost about 100,000 AUEC, so not an insignificant amount. A canister contains 10,000 units, quote unquote. Respawn at a tier 3 bed consumes 20,000 units. Respawn at a tier 2 bed consumes 10,000 units. I'd be curious what a respawn at a tier 1 bed does, but I'm not sure. It'd be interesting to see. And then healing, just like a leg injury or something, will take a smaller amount of units of gel. So they say 5,000 units. So again, it's going to be interesting. I won't go too far into this stuff because that's for another day, but it is on the Evo build, and I'm sure we'll all get to check it out very, very soon. So if you were looking forward to changes coming to medical, we're about to get some big changes. And hopefully that is just the start of bigger future medical changes. I really hope that's the case. Okay, let's keep going here. Actually, one second, everybody. I think I might know the issue. 1 second. Stand by. I might have some of my airflow blocked, so we're going to try to fix that. All right, we'll see if that helps. So, anyways, yes, we are talking about Star Citizen 1.0. I had a few people reach out to me with that article that came out recently and talk about Star Citizen 1.0 and essentially talking about, or the release date that was mentioned of 2027, 2028. I don't know what all of you think of that. I'll be honest with you. I'm not fully convinced that that is what was said in general. um, I know that is something that the article mentions Chris Roberts saying, but I don't know if there was any specific reason to put that on any high degree of like you know unsaltiness. I think what the journalist probably did was just take some anecdotal kind of mentions from CIG or CR about what they hope to do and this and that, and then formulated that into a full on release date of 2027, 2028. Again, I've seen every content creator under the sun do a show about it and specifically mention that CR must be crazy to come up with a date like that. I personally think all of them are rushing to judgment. We do not have full clarification that CR specifically said that to this journalist in any sort of way that was meant to be quoted like that. So I'm not putting that on CR yet. Is it possible he said that? Sure. But until CIG provides clarity on that, I'm not I don't put much stock into the article. The article also has some really strange, um, uh, uh, you know, it has a few strange like little facts that it drops in it. That's kind of weird. That, again, lead me to believe that the journalist maybe just made some mistakes in terms of how they took the information CIG was giving them in whatever interview they were doing, whatever discovery interview, and then just, I don't know, put it out there in kind of a strange way. I don't know. When I read it, there was a few things that I picked up on that I was like, that's kind of strange. That's kind of strange. But again, all what we have to do is we have to let them get Squadron 42 out and then take the next steps and see how fast that they're able to move on the game after that. Again, I'm a pretty firm believer that there's a lot going on behind the scenes. Obviously, there's a lot going on behind the scenes we don't know about, but I think there's a lot going behind the scenes, like even more than we think, right? And I think there's probably been a lot of progress made in certain areas that that CIG doesn't even want to mention in monthly reports of the progress tracker stuff that has been done. That's just sort of waiting to be picked up by art teams or downstream teams and stuff. So it's just something to say. Yeah, again, mistakes. That's diplomat. So yeah, I mean, look, I just think that until CIG provides any sort of official statement on those dates, I'm not reading too much into them just because a journalist said CR claimed that the game was coming 2027, 2028. Well, it starts as a 1.0. I don't necessarily just believe that off the cuff. Anyways, let's go ahead and get to it. I did want to, because I don't have a lot of time tonight and I want to monitor how this stream is going. Obviously, the stream is a little shaky tonight. But what I'm going to do is go back to this graphic. Some of you have probably remembered this from a previous stream. Now, I'm going to give a big, giant caveat to this, okay? This is just my opinion, okay? This graphic represents just my opinion. I probably forgot a lot of stuff that should be in here, okay? So as we go through it, if you all see stuff that you're like, where's blank? Where's XYZ? Point it out to me and I'll write it down. I'm going to add it to this. But this is just stuff that when I was thinking about it, these are the things I thought of as like, okay, we absolutely need these. And I sort of put them in level of importance. So there's critical, there's important, and there's moderate. What does that mean? Well, critical has to be in Star Citizen 1.0, right? To me, it has to be in there, right? Important also has to be in there, okay? It has to be in there. But the difference with important is that it can be in there, but CIG can maybe still bring some additional features and polish to it post 1.0. Okay, I mean they'll do that to all of this, but the important category could be released that with that understanding. The moderate is stuff that they really should have in there, all of it. However, I can see one or two or three or five things not making it and having to be added later. I could see some of the stuff having to be, you know, massaged, revised, completely changed, all that stuff as the game comes out. But this is sort of like the level of importance I place on them. And again, I'll go ahead and put this caveat now. I'm going to say this a few times. You may have a completely different list. If you do, I encourage you to make your own, share it on our Discord. I love having the Star Citizen 1.0 discussion. My priority list of features may not be what yours is. Now, I know I've said this about 4 times now, but I know I'm going to get messages saying you forgot XYZ and ABC and DEF, and how could you do this? The game will never launch without X, blah, blah, blah. So, anyway, we're going to zoom down and we'll sort of look at some of the stuff I am thinking about. Okay. So, let's talk about critical. For me, obviously there's core tech stuff. And of course, I don't know all the core tech that needs to be done for Star Citizen. There's some stuff that's like way over my head, of course. So this list could be 5-10 times longer probably, but a few things I think we all know we need for Star Citizen 1.0 is dynamic server meshing, right? We know that is something that is being worked on. There's even notes on in the latest monthly report, PU monthly report, about them doing dynamic server meshing work, okay? We need 500 plus player shards. Now, I think we need shards that hold much bigger player counts, but I think for Star Citizen 1.0, it's absolutely critical that we can have high performance shards that have at least 500 players in them, like 500 minimum. 500 minimum. Yes, it should be much higher than that. Maybe it should be 5,000. I don't know, 2,000, 1,000, whatever. But 500 minimum, right? They need stability metrics and optimization metrics. I probably should have put those next to each other. And this is probably something that CIG does have and is working on, but they need the tools to be able to see how the shards and services are running on a moment by moment basis so that they can strike team those issues in real time and deal with them. Okay, you've seen the same thing in other games like Warcraft and other MMOs where they've sort of got this mission control that monitors these metrics in real time and can tell when things need to be, fixed, tackled, servers restarted, all that kind of stuff. Okay. Content instancing, I do think that's a critical core feature. We did see in the PU monthly report they are starting to work out some of the stuff there. So I think content instancing is how we're going to get some of the larger fleet battle stuff, some of the larger gameplay stuff that people want, that people can employ large ships with, capital ships, and stuff like that. I think it is going to be a core feature of Star Citizen. If you look at any other MMO, instance content is a huge, huge part of it. Just because it's a massively multiplayer game, you can't dismiss instance content. So that's a key thing. In-game support, we need essentially game masters. We need in-game support that we can reach out to in real time from the game client and get assistance, whether it's account issues, other things like that. You know what I mean? Reporting, all that. We'll go into that under customer support in a minute, but essentially in-game support. Okay. StarSim. This is sort of the backbone of the economy, right? It's been called many names before it was quantum. We need that in the game. We need to have a working economy. Okay. I'm also a firm believer too that the economy can't be based only off the players. I think there needs to be player and NPC interaction with the economy, because the NPC interaction with the economy or the StarSim interaction with the economy, I think needs to be needs to almost act like the Federal Reserve, right? For us, it needs to be the balancing act to prevent the economy from going sideways in the game. Not that the economy shouldn't be able to be manipulated in some ways, but I do think we need that. So a star sim will be the backbone of the economy. Obviously, star sim powers a lot of other things. I'm not saying it's only economy, but that'll be key. And then obviously the Genesis stuff, Genesis Starkitect, Genesis Planet Tech V5, and Genesis Weather. Part of the reason that we need that and why that's critical for Star System 1.0 is that crafting and base building and the gathering professions, especially mining, farming, all that stuff, it's going to need Genesis and Planet Tech V5. And CIG already mentioned that to us. So at CitizenCon, and they said that was going to be a requirement. So those are things we need. We do know that CIG has already said that they are working on the first planet using Genesis Planet Tech V5. I personally think that planet's in Castro, by the way. We are getting some of this already, though, right? With weather, we're getting some of our weather stuff now. Again, some of these things we're already getting in the game in small amounts, right? Um, Permanent persistence. This is obviously a huge one. This one to me is one of the biggest ones. This is going to be things like no more reset, rollback recovery, the ability for CIG to roll back properly if there's a deployment that goes sideways. That rollback recovery is going to be key for people not to lose stuff. Item retention, ship retention, reputation retention, all that stuff working with persistence. Death of a Spaceman, again, that ties into persistence. It also is its own thing, Death of a Spaceman, but it also ties into persistence. That's going to be key. Insurance, right? Because insurance is one of the things that is, it's like Death of a Spaceman for our stuff, right? It is the thing that's going to regulate value of items. And then log in, log out continuity. This is a huge one, and one I hope comes to Star Citizen sooner rather than later. I want to be able to log out in an area, and when I log back in, I'm still in that area. You know what I mean? Still in that area. Don't worry, Dodger. We're getting to that one. It's in the important category, and I'll go further into why. But what I will say, Dodger, what I will say is the next one, customer support. We need that in-game reporting, player support, account support, formalized processes for reporting, suspension and bans, right? That can be like when you submit stuff in game via reporting system. That needs to factor into suspension and ban system, all that stuff. So hear you on the law and justice stuff. The customer support side, this is for like the people doing bad stuff that need to be fully on banned. We're going to get to the in-game justice stuff soon. Waybreak says, 100% with you on all this so far, but bump up those player counts. That's the player counts, the bare minimum. So 500 bare minimum to launch. I do think it needs to be much higher, but that's the bare minimum. New player experience. We definitely need this. We're all Star Citizen oldies and goldies in here, but new players, new people come to this game, they need a framework, right? So we need that intro narrative. We need a main story. Again, this is all stuff Richard Tyrer talked about at CitizenCon last year. So this is on their mind. Spectrum integration, okay? So people can get that help, get that information, get that encyclopedic knowledge right from in-game. They're not going to be going to the website. Balanced progression, right? So when a new player starts the game, they need to feel good about the pacing of that early period. There needs to be enough incentives given to them early on to keep them playing to a point where they are then invested and will stick around for the long haul. Okay? Much like CIG redid their referral program, that same thinking needs to come into the early new player experience in Star Citizen. We need a really robust tutorial and hints system, which we do have right now, but I think a bigger one coming that's a little bit more robust. Obviously, localization will be key, and then Squadron 42 carryover items. Again, less critical, but I think those things would really help really help Star Citizen coming off the release of Squadron 42, because Squadron 42 will release first, obviously. So having that tie-in is, in my opinion, critical, right? Because you need to be able to take Squadron players and bring them over into this environment. For those of you that have played MMOs in the past, what's the one thing you need for a successful MMO? You need players. For For those of you that have played MMOs in the past, what's the successful MMO? You need players. You need That's key. Again, there's stuff I'm forgetting here, people. There's stuff I'm forgetting. So there could be 6 more columns here, but just to go over some of it. Now, our important category. Let's start going through these left to right. Org and party tools. We know these are coming, right? We need things like in-game org representation, org admin tools, org-specific beacons. Okay, and the beacon system is a whole other thing, right? Bear with me here, everybody. I'm deleting some of these stupid announcements coming in. We need org recruitment boards, crew hiring, crew payment. We need to be able to set up escrow systems for that payment when we hire people from within our org. There needs to be almost sort of a org escrow system, right? Again, you could go on and on here, but that's key. Yeah, everyone, sorry. I don't know what is going on with Twitch tonight and my stream there. It's bizarre. Twitch average stream bitrate too high. Stand by, everybody. Let me look into something real quick here. Real quick. Bear with me, everybody. I want to just check one thing. Even YouTube skipped. Okay. I wonder if I'm just having some issues in my area right now. I'm looking at a few things here. Hold on one second. Okay, stand by here. Okay, I'm going to make one adjustment here, everyone. Hopefully this doesn't mess anything up. We're going to see if this fixes some things. Apologies. Appreciate you all bearing with me on that. Okay. We'll see how the stream does from here on out. Hopefully it gets a little better. Sorry about that. Wave break. Graham, the YouTube is skipping at times. Okay, gotcha. I'm bringing down the bit rate down a little bit. I may have been a little too high. Let's see if it may take a few minutes, but let's see if it kind of balances out here in a bit. So org and party tools, a good thing here is we know that this is being worked on, right? So that's good. Chat communication, another huge one. I mean, you could probably put this in critical for an MMO especially, but we need org chat, we need raid chats or instance content chats channels. We need party chats. I personally would like us to get radio emulation. If you've ever played Arma 3 and used the Acre or TFAR mod, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. We need to be able to do data transfers in game. I think that's going to be key with data, whether that is radar scan data, ship manifest data, cargo manifest data, all that kind of stuff. We need to be able to way to communicate that. Now, maybe that is all done through scanning, but I consider scanning part of that kind of communication system because it's part of how we relay information from one person to another person. So, for example, when we do scans, we need to be able to send that scan data to other ships, right? And then we need filters. Again, this could be a lot longer, this column. You see how I left space under here? Is because I could add more to this, okay? But chat and communication, going to be really important. Solar systems, right? Systems, our environment. Obviously, Stanton, Pyro, Nix, Terra, and Castro. We know those are 1.0 systems. But we need planet variety, which I think CIG is doing a pretty good job of. I would like to see some stuff even a little bit more extreme with some active surfaces. Lava, volcanoes, waterfalls. I would love to see some of that. Not critical or anything, but it's important for those 5 systems to have a lot of interesting variety. Now, CIG's shown us with their Starkitect tool that they're going to be able to populate the planets with a lot of POIs, which is great. But what I'm more referring to there in planet variety is natural variety, right? Which I do think CIG is making a real strong effort at doing. But we need fauna, harvestable flora, and then obviously POIs, which will come through Starkitect. Fastcart says, don't go chasing waterfalls. Absolutely. 100%. 100%. Good advice. Reputation. This one is a pretty important one, I think, for 1.0 because I think a lot of how we interact with those guilds. Remember those guilds that are coming, the Industrial Guild and the Mercenary Guild, stuff like that. This is going to be super important. So personal reputation, player reputation, and some sort of profile on our character, I think, is going to be important. And that profile may be on the back end, but essentially what needs to happen is whether we're interacting with NPC groups and guilds and or real people in the verse, we need some sort of rating system. CIG has already shown us that this is coming, which I was glad to see because I was a little concerned based off some stuff other people were telling me that CIG may try to avoid that. So personally, I'm glad to see that they are going to go down that sort of personal rating sort of system. So hopefully, again, hopefully that is the case. Insurance, right? So that's going to govern things like item recovery, ship recovery. There's going to be insurance plans. And then ultimately, I think with the insurance system, we need a customer service tie-in. So that stuff needs to be tied in with the customer service reporting system, because if and when though that system does not work correctly, we need to be able to send reports in on that so that we can get ships or items or stuff recovered even if the insurance system breaks or whatever, right? So yeah, insurance system really important. Player Yelp. Yeah. So on the review thing, again, going into the personal reputation box here, I think that could essentially be some sort of player Yelp. And now some people have said, well, couldn't popular streamers or content creators, pile on somebody else and get all their people to sort of give that person bad reputation interactions? That is possible, but I think you should only be able to give those reviews when you have interacted with that player. So actually closed a transaction with them. Or, well, I guess you'd want broken transactions as well. Let's say maybe there's reasons for, or maybe it's something where you have to either respond to a beacon, close a contract, or have a contract started, put into escrow, even if the contract's never closed out because maybe the person's an asshole. Either way, there needs to be some situation where you can leave some sort of rating for how your interaction went. But if it's limited to just the people that are able to interact with you, then it would prevent people from like piling on, right? It hopefully would prevent that. So yeah, let's keep going. Gameplay. Again, this could be 1,000 items long. Just a couple that came to top of my mind. We need profession to profession in gameplay. So we need mining, tying into refinery gameplay, tying into crafting, tying into base building. They all need to link and sync together. You've heard Richard Tyler talk a lot about this, how a lot of the little things are kind of being developed for the game, but we need that tissue that connects them all, right? And that is 100% accurate. Profession to economy gameplay. So we need our professions to be tying into StarSim. Profession to marketplace. We need to be able to, there needs to be some sort of marketplace, whether it's an auction house or whatever, where we can sell our wares that is not just us selling them through the chat channels and people coming to us and buying them directly from us. I think there needs to be some sort of marketplace front end for us to sell high volume goods. Like if we want to sell 200,000 SCU of tin, there needs to be a better way of doing that than me just like sitting there with a whole sea floating in space selling it to someone. Okay. We need NPC guilds, which we know is coming, to give that gameplay structure, and give that, and that way our goals can tie directly into structure that CIG has laid out for us. We need quantum travel, and I probably should have just called it travel or enhanced travel. CIG's talked a lot about this with quantum boost and stuff. We need a better way of getting around the verse. Even right now, using quantum markers in the map and setting those and stuff, it just feels not quite there, right? And one of the major things for Star Citizen, while it doesn't seem like gameplay, getting from A to B to C in Star Citizen is one of the things you're going to be spending a lot of time doing. There needs to be gameplay within that. So those travel times need to have gameplay. I do think engineering is bringing gameplay to the quantum travel experience. But yeah. And then obviously NPC guilds, which for some reason I've listed twice. Maybe I thought they were double important. I don't know. But there's that. Economy. Again, we need profession to profession economy, so we need values and all kinds of stuff for professions to professions and profession to profession interaction and synergy there, just from economy standpoint. XQ says we need Starjump to get good at loading cargo. Oh, you should have seen me loading the other day or earlier today. I when I don't have a bugged server or a bugged Star Citizen experience, I can sling that cargo. And the raft did a great job. It's a great ship for and the Atlas. It does a great job together. But I need a server that's functioning for that. So we also need the profession to economy gameplay, right? And what I essentially mean there, even though that's kind of the same under gameplay, the gameplay is the act of doing it, but we need to be able to manipulate the economy based off our the amount of profession work being done. So for example, if a lot of people are mining and a lot of mine materials and stuff and resources are being sold on some sort of marketplace, then we need to see that reflected in the economy. Again, I mentioned that marketplace. We do need some sort of auction house. Maybe the TDD becomes a place where you can do that sort of buying and selling, but we need something like that. I do wish CIG would address that. They have never mentioned it. I've specifically hoped they would talk about it at different events. They've never talked about it once. I sincerely hope CIG is not expecting us just to sell everything by listing it in the chat channel. And the reason is you are going to have orgs out there that may have 500, they may have 1 million SCU of recycled materials that they want to sell. They may have 1 million SCU they want to sell. You can't sell that just like on the chat channel or piecemeal it out just to small buyers. You need to be able to list that on a marketplace where orgs that want to do a massive purchase of materials, maybe they're building a space station or something, they can do that. And then when they do make that purchase, that stuff is then shipped to a location of their choosing for pickup. Maybe it's shipped to a base of theirs. Maybe it's shipped to a landing zone of theirs, whatever the case may be, but it needs to be shipped to a place automatically where they can then retrieve it. I 100% think that needs to be like a critical system. And then obviously an escrow system. We definitely need an escrow system in Star System. We need the ability to hire someone, put the money in escrow. The person we hire agrees to that, and then when the mission's over, that money leaves escrow and goes to the person who signed up for the mission. We need that. It's fundamental to crew hiring. I really hope CIG talks about that more. The prisoner says the only marketplace stuff they mentioned was with the BMM. Yeah, so that's the NPC storefronts, but what we need is like an auction house where we list our own goods on there, right? So a little different than the BMM and Privateer. We need like an auction house like World of Warcraft has, right? So you want them to make Grimazon. Yes, we need Grimazon. Absolutely. I'm glad you thought of it. I'm glad you said it. I didn't want to say it, but you said it. Another important thing is we need the commoditization of data, right? So data types, okay, whether that's information on locations, jump points, resources, this and that and the other, we need that. We need a way to physicalize it. We need a way to physicalize it because we need a way to sell it. Okay, again, another thing CIG hasn't said. Now, what I think CIG is going to do is when you do get scan data or resource data or any other data that you want to sell, you're going to take that data. It's going to go into your computers on your ship, and then you're going to insert some sort of data card. It's going to go on that data card, and then you sell that data card with that information. That's what I think they're going to do. Physicalized blueprints, which we know we're getting. Data storage, data collection, data ownership. Again, all things CIG has talked about, right? That will then tie into scanning, further ties into hacking, right? We need to be able to, scanning is a way of procuring data. Hacking is a way of stealing data or circumventing or let's say capturing data, right? It's another way of capturing data is through hacking. So again, there's probably a lot of stuff I'm forgetting here. 100%. Again, make your own list, but this should give you at least an idea of some of the stuff under some of these categories. Beacon system, this is the one that probably needs to be 3 times as long as this. We need different types of beacons, a lot of different types. We need custom beacons that we can set up on our own that have a lot of granularity to who they're targeting, what they're targeting, being able to put money into escrow via the beacon itself. That way, when people accept the beacon, they're essentially signing up for the mission and signing up for that money that's waiting in escrow upon mission completion. Okay. We need broadcast filters. We need a lot of stuff for that beacon system. Okay. Ship multi-crew. Again, this is something CIG's talked a lot about. Roles, which they're working on. We hope we get more roles. I mean, it wasn't, I think I was just talking with someone the other day with this medical gel stuff, right? The medical goo. I'm hoping through research and crafting that you're going to be able to craft your own medical goo recipes that give you buffs and benefits, right? And in that sense, you sort of become a medical scientist, right? So that can kind of become a role on a ship, the role of the doctor who can kind of come up with that stuff. It's a crafting role and an interactive medical role. But again, I hope they think outside the box on this stuff. We've heard about, engineer and the sub roles there, but I think there's a lot more CIG can do inside the ships, especially the large ships in terms of roles. Resource management, again, we know it's coming. We need a better in-ship comm systems, both intercoms and specific channels set up for specific people. Again, other games have done this. We need onboard security. I do think that comes with engineering and resource management gameplay, the ability to lock doors down, vent, vent atmosphere, all that kind of stuff. Bed logging, I put this one on there before CIG talked about bed logging being reinvented and not going to be centered around beds now. But essentially, beds do need to bring some sort of benefit. I've been on other shows recently where we've talked a little bit about that. I personally think beds on your ship should allow NPC crew members to like wake up and be on your ship for usage. It allow NPC crew members to on your ship for usage. Think of the ability, in my opinion, for certain ranks on the ship to be able to take over control if and when needed, right? So, for example, if the bridge is commandeered, I think it would be really cool if the person in engineering can override control if they have like a high rank on the ship. Let's say they're the highest rank on the ship at that time. And those ranks you would set up in the party system or in the ship crew system that CIG is hopefully coming with. But essentially, when you have that higher rank, you can use the engineering terminals and lock out ship control from the bridge or from engineering or from any terminal. Again, if you have the right rank. If there's people that can hack, maybe you're one of the pirates that aboard the ship, you can override control via hacking and stuff, right? So again, I think pretty important. Again, there's more stuff that can be here. Waybreak says, physical auction house or Moby-Glass app? That's a good question. I think it should be physical, only because the Moby-Glass might be a little too convenient and too much power in the hands. But it's a good question. I could see arguments for both sides of that. I could see arguments for both sides. Player. So we need further actor status systems, which we know are coming. Actor status tier 2 is the next one we're getting. Character creator, which we got. Again, some of this stuff we've gotten already. Customization of our player, we do have that. We do need the ability to change character customization after the fact once we're in game. Again, I think additional role play resources in the game would be great. So the ability to name your character, give it backstory and bio. Personally, I think that'd be cool. Specialties and classes, I do think you need to be able to specialize in stuff and get some sort of benefits to that role. Personally, I think that's what they need. Um, those don't necessarily need to be through character stats. They could be through tools you carry or, um, clothing you wear give you certain benefits. CIG is definitely going down that road, but I think that needs to be there. Personal rating, we talked about that. Diversity representation, obviously CIG is doing that. It's critical for a game nowadays for marketing purposes and appealing to a wider market, and that's diversity in all things, not just through gameplay. Patriot, thank you very much. Not just through physical representation, which is important, but just through the variety of characters you can create. But if you look at the way CIG has built the character creator, they're really leaning into that. You can create. I've seen people look, however you could possibly want. The only thing, obviously, is we're limited on our body types, but is what it is. Starware obviously is a big one CAG's going to lean into. Again, I think that links back into specialties in class, where some of the Starware stuff is going to tie into those. It's going to sort of become the benefits to what you wear and heighten your abilities in those areas. Obviously, weapons and utility, those are stuff CIG's been making since day one. We need lots of weapons. We need lots of utility items. We need lots of ways to do the things we want with our characters. On the ship front, oh, 90s gifted subs, gifted 5 tier 1 subs. Thank you very much, 90s. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Give you the old double salute, sending the Kraken overhead. Best ship, obviously. Very, very cool. Thank you for that support. Appreciate it. Everyone, how's the stream doing? How's it holding up? And yeah, Dillman, I think we need to be able to play as those alien races eventually, right? Banu, Tavaran. I want them to bring that diversity in to the game. It'll make the world feel richer. Hopefully the streams are holding up, everybody. I hope so. For ships, a lot of this stuff they're already doing really well on ships with, because they've been doing the ship thing for a while now. But role variety, we need radar and scanning. We need crew size variety amongst the ships. Again, all stuff we have. We need resource management, utility, and usability. So the ships themselves need to be useful outside of their role, right? They need to be useful. And that sometimes it's useful just for getting around, landing, all that stuff. The ships are our key to how we interact and get around the world. This is not a game where you're going to walk from ArcCorp to Crusader. So the ships become a key they become almost an extension of our character in terms of how we get around. We do need ship persistence, like solid ship persistence. It's iffy now. We need working escape pods, gameplay synergy. So our ships need to tie directly into the roles that they're doing, of course, right? So if it's a salvage ship, it needs to salvage. Obviously, some of this stuff's pretty obvious, and CIG's been doing it for a while, but again, important. All ships need some level of defensive capability, whether through shields, automated turrets, other defensive measures, being able to alter EM and IR signatures. Again, all stuff CIG has been doing already, so feeling good there. And then I think it's important when we get to 1.0 that all the current ships be brought up to a gold standard, or at the very least a current standard. They shouldn't be launched in Star Citizen 1.0 with a ship that has not been brought up to current standards, at the very least, in my opinion, or what we might call the 1.0 standard. Maybe CIG needs to turn it from gold standard to 1.0 standard. Real quick here, let's keep going. Death of a Spaceman, right? So we need levels of imprint. So we need to understand how those different imprint levels are going to be handled upon each successive respawn, what we're going to lose, how we're going to lose it, what the benefits the negatives of that is going to be, and whatnot. We need to further understand inheritance upon death. So when our character is fully exhausted their lives and all that stuff gets handed on to our next of kin or our progeny, we need to understand how that system is going to fully work. Again, we've been given clues to how it's going to work, but it's key to know what that's going to look like. What are the reputation effects of that? Again, since one of the primary things you're going to lose and have to regrind is going to be reputation. Items and stuff probably are going to be a lot easier to recover just because you may have several banked up. You may have people in your org that can help you get some of that stuff back quicker. We need to see what Death of a Spaceman looks like in terms of the effects it would have on an org that you're a member of, what the UEC effects of that are, right? Your property effects, all that kind of stuff. And then ultimately, how Death of a Spaceman affects progression. And we know it will affect progression, and we know Death of a Spaceman will tie into all this stuff. But how and at what balanced level? Because if you get this wrong, you're going to frustrate players and they're not going to want to play because it's going to feel too punishing. If you don't lean into it at all, the game's going to become just a troll factory where no one fears death and they just act like crazy people, right? So, Death of a Spaceman is a very, very important system to get right for 1.0 and one that I hope they let us test for a bit. A lot of people were asking, like, could this Star System 1.0 be ready for 2028? They possibly could have the features built. My concern is the time to actually test all this stuff, properly test it, right? All right, now we're going to move over to the moderate category, which is pretty long. I'm not going to call out every single one of these, but we'll talk about a few of them. We need law and order. So, Dodger, I think it was you that brought that up. Obviously, we need a law and order system. The reason I put this under moderate, though, is I think CIG is going to have to develop. They're going to have to develop some of the law and order system when they are at scale, because we're not going to have a good understanding of how the law and order system, like what all the edge cases are going to be until we are at scale. So I think a lot of the work can be done, but I can see CIG working on it even after 1.0 release. But again, all this moderate stuff, everyone, should be in 1.0, right? It absolutely should be in 1.0. I'm just saying that it can be worked on after 1.0 releases as well and further iterated on. Law and order, there should be missions, player laws, and all these have missions associated with them because all of these gameplay loops should have missions associated with them for both player and NPC, right? But player laws, in-game punishment, reporting, suspension and bans, system laws, so laws for different in each system, right? Which they've talked a lot about, different in Pyro than they are to Stanton. We need different prisons, right? Not just Klesher. We need criminal gameplay. And I don't know why I had it twice there, but we do. We need criminal gameplay, which CIG has been messing with in Klesher. That's been like a small testing bed for that. But that'll need to be deeper. And then ultimately, there needs to be a progression for the law and order system. And that is the case for all of these. There's got to be progression in every gameplay loop you build in. Even if that progression is small progression, just little things, there needs to be something there. Medical system, again, this is going to tie into actor status, but there needs to be interactive procedures. Again, hopefully they'll bring that on board with things like cybernetics and stuff. I hope they go into things like buffs and knowledge levels for medical work. So, for example, if you get your medical knowledge up higher, then you're able to do things like cybernetics, right? Obviously, medical beacons. The salvage loop, we need munching, scraping, siphoning, processing. We need to be able to go to the TDD and sell that stuff. We need marketplace selling, so auction house, right? And then we need gameplay synergy with the salvage loop across other loops. So we need it to be in sync with refining gameplay. We need salvaging to be in sync with base building. Again, they need to play amongst each other. They can't be isolated gameplay loops. As Richard Tyre said, they need to all play into each other. We need refueling. Okay, they need to go further with this. They've done some of it, but we need more. We need more stuff here, and needs to be further fleshed out. Mining. We need surface mining, asteroid mining, underground mining, FPS mining, TDD selling. Again, auction house selling, all that kind of stuff. Gameplay synergy. You'll notice a lot of these have some of the same callouts for this stuff. But again, we need a refinery gameplay loop, right? We need cargo loop, okay? And that would include things like physicalized cargo, serial number ownership, right? Manifest for cargo, okay? Um, Cargo type, cargo scale. Cargo type would be things like volatile cargoes, large cargo, small car, all that kind of stuff. We need some sort of system for inspections and customs. Again, the whole if we got ships that have smuggling rooms with shielded cargo areas, then I imagine we're going to have some sort of inspection custom scanning system the NPC is going to do to our cargo, which they do that now, but I imagine they're going to go further with that. But we also need things like route planning. We need to be able to plan trade routes, okay, for maximum efficiency. We need to be able to, essentially what we need to be able to do is create routes on the star map and save those. So for example, if you're doing a run of a certain commodity and you know you're going to make 3 stops and that's going to be your efficient run, you need to be able to go to the star map, look up cargo run 7 as a preset that you've saved, click on it, and it populates the route in automatically for you, and boom, you're ready to go. Bounty hunting. Okay, we need prisoner tracking, prisoner restraint, prisoner transport, processing. We need a bounty hunting licensing system, okay, to give you that authority. We need some sort of bulletin board for the bounty hunting gameplay to be able to post bounties, okay. Exploration tier 1, okay, because you can have further tiers of this, but exploration tier 1, we need jump point mapping. Point of interest scanning, commodity scanning, resource scanning. Okay, we need to be able to go to a planet, scan an entire area of a planet, and get an understanding of which areas have higher resources and all that kind of stuff. That's going to be a part of exploration. We need attribute scanning. Again, there's going to be commodity scanning, but I think attribute scanning too, right? So when you scan the ground, you need to understand, how much moisture there is. Is it going to be a good place to put a farm, right? What kind of sunlight does it get? All that kind of stuff. I call those attributes. We need to be able to mark coordinates or save coordinates. Again, going back to our data gameplay. And then again, we need to be able to sell that information, that exploration information on the marketplace. Base building. We need to understand what property is. We need to understand what blueprints are going to give us in terms of base building. Again, CIG's talked about some of this recently. We need to understand build times. We need resource usage, resource generation. So if you put down a big ground mining structure, you need to know how many resources that's going to pull from you, how much power is going to be needed to power that, versus how much resources it's generating, right? How many mining resources is that outputting? Right, so we need good factors for all that. Again, when CIG showed the base building stuff, if you were paying attention to any of the UIs they were showing, a lot of this stuff was in there. One of the things I put down was orbital building. This was before they announced the space station, because I made this chart a long time ago. But now we know about the space station stuff. Player support and org support. So if you're building a base, friends of yours, and especially people in your orgs, should be able to come to that location and help build, right? They need to help be part of a grander plan. And that links back to a thing where if you're trying to build a base, it would be nice if you could put a base plan together that can be shared amongst people. And that base plan would maybe have an overview map with buildings that you're wanting to put down that haven't yet, and their rough locations. That way, if a friend or a couple friends come over to the base that's being built for the org, they can look at that plan and go, oh, okay, you're building some habitation buildings over here. On this building plan, you have it to where you want a hospital over up on this hill. We're going to go build that, right? I would hope they would do something like that, because if you saw some of these bases they were showing off, some of these things were huge with like 100 buildings or more. How are you going to plan for that. Now, I will say I do have plans for Starjump Fleet Viewer to support that. No promises yet, but I got some ideas, and we want to aid with base building. Okay, we'll go into that a different time. Crafting, again, crafting skills, blueprints, crafting tables. CIG's talked about a lot of this stuff. Crafting tables essentially being crafting machines, okay, for lack of a better word. Manufacturing, right? So again, tying into blueprints, but build times, resource usage, production output. For example, if you build a ship fabrication hangar, you're going to want to know how many ships you can output per hour, right? With the right, or at the very least, you're going to want to know is putting one type of fabrication hangar down better, one type down versus another type better. Like, do you need higher quality ships built? Is that completely based on the blueprints? Do some fabrication hangars build faster than others? Because remember, all the buildings have tiers to them as well. They have 3 tiers as well of quality. So again, that's going to be pretty deep. Data running loop, again, hacking, encryption, data storage, data ownership, corruption, all that kind of stuff. Science loop, CIG's talked a little bit about that. Research, you want to be able to experiment. You need to be able to experiment to get small bonuses out of there. But input commodity, like what you're putting into the research and into the to the research stuff, and then what you're getting out, that whatever that output commodity is. For passenger loop, again, we're going to need booking and ticketing, boarding, route planning. We need missions built around that, right? We need in-flight service, which CIG's talked a little bit about in the past. We need the ability to, NPCs and players need the ability to rate that passenger service. Needs to be based on NPC and player, okay? You need to be able to advertise and sell your tickets somewhere, some sort of marketplace, right? Did I not have repair on here? I thought I had repair. No, I'll add it because it should be there. Thank you, Mew. It should be there. Again, I told you this. There's some I forgot. Racing, farming. Again, there's a ton of these. But here's the important thing. Let me zoom back out here. This is just what was top of mind for me, right, when I was thinking about this. And actually, I did have repair on here at another time because I remember now what some of its listings for it was. I wonder if it got deleted. It may have gotten deleted when I saved this out. I'll have to go back and find that. But where I'm going with this is Star System 1.0 needs a lot of stuff, right? Now, you could get away with not maybe having all these gameplay loops ready to go for 1.0. Some of these maybe could come later. Maybe passenger loop comes later. Farming loop maybe comes later. I don't know. But some of these need to be in. So you see there's a lot to do. A lot to do. With that being said, what do you all think? What do you think about Star Citizen 1.0? Do you think it's realistic for CIG to get this out by 2028 if that article was accurate, and then that's what they're targeting? Mew235 says repair, refuel, rearm are all kind of conjoined. Yeah, that's a great point. I will put that one in there because I want to post this chart. I will add that one to it, Moo. That's a great call out. Waybreak says, do you consider anything from moderate as expendable? No, I don't think any of it is expendable, to be honest with you. Some of it is just less important to be at 100% for 1.0 release. Some of them need to be at 100%, and some of them can maybe be at like 90% or 70%, right? But they're all important, in my opinion. Beta by 2028, I think. I'd agree with that. I would agree with that. Yeah. I think that's pretty accurate. I think that's pretty accurate. Beta by 2028, I think. I'd agree with that. Probably pretty accurate. Real quick here. I am going to Dodger says 1.0 needs at least 2 years after Squadron 42 is released. Yeah, I agree. That's probably a bare minimum. Probably like a bare minimum. Probably like a bare minimum. Everyone, I am going to work on this stream. I need to figure out why Twitch is having issues. I don't know why it's having issues. It's being a bit weird, and I don't know why that is. I appreciate you all being patient, though, and helping me deal with it. Again, I don't totally understand why it's doing this. I do have a bunch of drop frames. But it's an exciting time. We do have some great stuff coming up. Ship Showdown just ended. We're now starting to enter that period where we're looking ahead towards CitizenCon, and then soon after that, IAE. It's crazy that it's coming this quick, but look, it's already September. Okay, October's big, November's big, and then we end the year out. So we're getting to that exciting time where if you're looking forward to Star Citizen news, information, and shiny new things, this is the time of year to get excited. So hopefully you enjoy it. So I'm going to go work on that. I do appreciate you all bearing with me. You all are amazing. Love you all. I'm sorry for this stream getting delayed. It's been a busy week for me, and I've been wanting to spend some time with my daughter. So again, I appreciate it. I'm going to send you over to someone I just rated the other day, but I want to get some people over to his channel. So go over there. Please give him a little bit of love. I'm going to send you over to Tree0311. Looks like he's talking about the Odin system. So if you want to hear more about that, go listen to Odin. Go listen to Tree talk about Odin and give him some of that Starjump love. I really appreciate you all. You'll see me all probably Sunday night. Sunday night, I'll probably be doing some Race for Stanton gameplay again, and I promise execute. I can load the ship now. Things are working well again. So everyone have a great night. Give Tree